The padlock was so rusted I nearly broke my wrist trying to force it. Beside me, Helen held the flashlight steady, her breath making small clouds in the November air. The harbor storehouse loomed above us, 3 stories of weathered brick and salt-stained windows, dark for longer than either of us could remember. "Maybe we should just go, Frank," she said quietly. "Find a shelter before it gets colder." I looked at the eviction notice folded in my coat pocket, then at the deed the lawyer had given us that morning. Our last asset. A building we'd never seen, inherited from my uncle who'd worked harbor security 40 years ago. "Let's just look inside," I said. "See if there's anything worth selling." The lock finally broke. The door scraped open, and we stepped into darkness that smelled of old rope and machinery oil. Behind us, somewhere in town, our sons were probably celebrating, finally free of the burden of caring for aging parents. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 6 months earlier, Helen and I still lived in the house where we'd raised our 3 boys. I'd worked 34 years as a merchant marine engineer, Helen 29 as a school nurse. We put all 3 sons through college. James became a lawyer, Michael a surgeon, David a financial consultant. They'd all done well. Better than well. We were proud. We'd succeeded. In July, James sat us down in our own living room with that lawyer's smile he uses in court. "Dad, Mom, we need to talk about your finances. You're 76 and 74. The house is too much. You can barely manage the stairs." "We manage fine," Helen said, her nurse's voice calm. "You fell last month, Dad," Michael added. He'd driven in from the city for this, still wearing his hospital badge. "What if it's serious next time? What if Mom can't help you?" They had pamphlets. 3 different assisted living facilities, all carefully researched. They'd done tours. Made spreadsheets. "These are excellent places," David said, pulling up photos on his tablet. "Full medical staff, activities, social opportunities. You'd be safer. Happier." "We're happy here," I said. James leaned forward. "Dad, be realistic. The house is worth $600,000, maybe more. That money could secure your care for years. But if you wait until there's a crisis, until you can't make decisions anymore, it gets complicated. You need to sell now, while you're competent." The word hung in the air. Competent. "And if we don't want to sell?" Helen asked. The 3 of them exchanged glances. Michael spoke first. "Then we'd have to consider other options. For your own protection." They left us the pamphlets and a week to decide. We fought it. Of course we fought it. The house was ours, paid off, full of 48 years of memories. But James was a lawyer and knew exactly how to frame it. Michael got a doctor to write a letter expressing concerns about independent living capacity. David presented financial analysis showing we'd outlive our resources without intervention. In September, a judge ruled in their favor. We were assigned a guardian, some professional James recommended. The house went up for sale. We had 60 days. "We'll visit you every week," James promised, as we signed papers we couldn't fight. "The facility is nice. You'll make friends." But when we actually looked at the place, really looked, we saw the truth. Shared rooms, institutional meals, schedules and rules, and the smell of disinfectant trying to mask something worse. The deposit alone was $40,000. The monthly fees would drain our savings in 3 years. "Then what?" Helen asked the director. "Then we work with social services," she said, smiling professionally. "There are programs." We withdrew our signatures, forfeited the deposit. James called, furious. "You're being irrational. Where will you live?" "We'll find something," I said. "No," he said, and his voice was cold in a way I'd never heard. "You won't. We've tried to help you. We've been patient. But we're done. You're on your own." Michael and David agreed. I tried calling back, left messages. Helen wrote letters. Nothing. The house sold in October. We weren't invited to the closing. We spent 3 weeks in a motel that charged by the day and didn't ask questions. Our savings, what James and David hadn't already secured for our care, dwindled fast. We looked at apartments we couldn't afford, shelters that were full, called every friend we had left, but most were dead or in their own struggles. Then the lawyer's letter arrived, forwarded from our old address. My Uncle Martin had died. He'd left me his harbor property and all contents thereof. The letter included a deed, a key, and an address down by the old commercial docks. I barely remembered Uncle Martin, my father's brother, 20 years older, who'd worked security at the harbor until he retired in the 80s. He died in a nursing home, alone, no service. The building was listed as a storehouse, last used in 1984. It's probably worthless, Helen said, studying the deed. But it's something. We took the bus to the harbor district. The area was mostly abandoned now, old brick buildings with broken windows, docks rotting into the water. Our building sat at the end of a pier, 3 stories tall, solid despite the decay around it. The current property tax bill, we discovered at the county office, was $78 a year, paid automatically from some ancient escrow account. Someone had been maintaining the payment for 40 years. Now, standing in the darkness with Helen's flashlight cutting through the dust, I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. The ground floor was mostly empty, some old crates, broken furniture, tools rusted into uselessness. But along the far wall, I spotted something. A door marked, "Authorized personnel only," sealed with 6 heavy deadbolts. New deadbolts. Installed recently. My hands shook as I tried the key from the lawyer's envelope. It fit the first lock, then the second, then all 6. Helen gripped my arm. "Frank, maybe we shouldn't." But I was already pulling the door open. Behind it, stairs led down into darkness. And from below, I heard something impossible. The hum of electricity, steady and strong. Someone had been paying more than just taxes. The stairs descended 20 feet into what should have been below the waterline. But the walls were concrete, thick and dry, and the electrical hum grew louder with each step. Helen stayed close behind me, her flashlight beam bouncing off metal railings that looked freshly painted. "This doesn't make sense," she whispered. "Your uncle was a security guard. Why would he have?" The stairs ended at another door. This one was steel, modern, with a keypad that glowed green in the darkness. But it also had a manual override, a simple deadbolt that opened with our key. Inside was a room the size of a basketball court, lit by emergency lighting that kicked on automatically when we entered. And stacked along every wall, floor to ceiling, were shipping containers. The kind used for international cargo, but smaller. Maybe 50 of them, each marked with codes and dates from the early 1980s. On a desk near the door sat a folder, sealed in plastic. My name was written on it in my uncle's handwriting. Inside was a letter dated 1984. "Frank, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you're probably in trouble." That's what I figured. What I hoped, actually. That you'd need this when you were old enough to use it wisely. I worked harbor security for 38 years. Started in 1946, fresh back from the war. In 1952, they gave me a special assignment. Federal agents had seized cargo, contraband, drug money, smuggled cash from operations all along the eastern seaboard. Millions of dollars that couldn't be processed through normal channels because the investigations involved senators, judges, police chiefs. People who could make evidence disappear. So they disappeared it differently. Gave it to a few trusted men to hide until later. Later never came. The cases got buried. The men who knew about it retired or died. By 1980, I realized no one was coming for it. No one even remembered it existed. The government seized it illegally, from criminals they couldn't prosecute legally. It's been in limbo for 30 years. According to my lawyer friend, you'll find his letter attached. It's legally abandoned property. The statute of limitations expired in 1977. It belongs to whoever possesses it. That's you now. I spent 3 years moving it here, 1 container at a time, during night shifts. Built this room myself, paid in cash, kept it off all records. The building deed is clean. Bought it in 1956 as an investment, nothing suspicious. The power and maintenance are paid automatically from an account with enough funds to last 100 years. Use it well. Don't be stupid. Don't tell anyone. And Frank, I'm sorry I was never around when you were growing up. I was busy building this, building something that might save you someday. I hope it does. Uncle Martin. Attached was a letter from a lawyer, now deceased, confirming the legal analysis. And a handwritten inventory list. Helen read over my shoulder, her hand finding mine. "Frank," she said softly, "open one." The nearest container had a combination lock, but the code was written on the inventory. 1946, Uncle Martin's start year. Inside were bricks of cash, vacuum sealed and wrapped. Old hundreds, mostly, but also 50s and 20s. Below those were gold bars, small ones, stamped with banks that probably didn't exist anymore. We opened 5 containers. Then 10. They were all the same. It took us 6 hours to count just one container completely. $8,200,000 plus 40 pounds of gold. The inventory listed 53 containers. Helen sat on the concrete floor, her back against a container, and laughed. Then cried. Then laughed again. Our sons threw us away, she said, for a house worth $600,000. I sat beside her. My hands ached from counting. My heart ached from something else. What do we do? I asked. She was quiet for a long time. Outside, through the thick walls, we could hear fog horns on the harbor. The same sounds Uncle Martin must have heard for 38 years. We disappear, she said finally, like the money did. We take what we need, hide the rest, and we disappear. Over the next month, we worked carefully. I hired contractors from 3 different states, paying cash, having them renovate the storehouse 1 floor at a time. Insulation, heating, plumbing. We converted the 2nd floor into a small apartment, kitchen, bedroom, sitting room. Comfortable, but not lavish. The 3rd floor became storage for our belongings, the few things we'd kept from the house sale. Photographs, Helen's mother's china, my father's tools. The basement became a vault. I installed a false wall, hiding 48 of the containers behind it. 5 containers we moved to various safety deposit boxes in different cities, using a lawyer from 2 states away to handle the paperwork under a trust name. We kept 1 container in the apartment, hidden in a floor safe I installed myself. $8 million for emergencies. The rest, $402 million, by our best count, sat behind concrete and steel, waiting. We registered the building as our legal residence. Got a mailbox. Updated our information with Social Security. Anyone looking would find us, but no one was looking. Our sons had moved on. In December, James called. Helen answered. Mom? It's James. Look, I wanted to check on you. For Christmas. Where are you staying? Helen's voice was steady. We have a place. What kind of place? Are you safe? Do you need anything? We're fine, James. Mom, I know you're angry, but we only did what we thought was. James, she interrupted. You made your choice. We've made ours. We're fine. We don't need your help. Can I at least send you some money? For the holidays? Helen looked at me. I shook my head. No thank you, she said. Goodbye, James. She hung up, sat down at our small kitchen table, looking out the window at the harbor lights. That was easier than I thought, she said. Was it? I asked. She considered. No, but it was necessary. Michael called on Christmas Eve. David called New Year's Day. Helen kept the conversations brief, polite, distant. Yes, we're fine. No, we don't need anything. Yes, we'll call if that changes. They never asked where we were. Never offered to visit. Just called to ease their guilt, then went back to their lives. We let them. In February, we were having coffee on the 2nd floor deck I'd built, small, overlooking the harbor, when we saw a woman sitting on the pier. Young, maybe 25, with a backpack and a sleeping bag. She was crying. Helen set down her cup. I'll make extra breakfast. The woman's name was Sarah. She'd been evicted from her apartment, lost her job, was waiting for a shelter bed. Her mother had died the year before. Her father didn't answer her calls. We gave her eggs and toast and coffee. Let her use our shower. Helen found clean clothes that fit. I can't pay you, Sarah said, embarrassed. We're not asking you to, Helen replied. Before she left, I gave her an envelope. There's a rooming house 2 miles from here. The landlord's decent. This should cover 3 months' rent and deposits. Get stable, then get better. Inside was $3,000 in old bills. Sarah stared at it, then at us. I can't. This is too much. It's exactly enough, Helen said. Pass it forward someday. After she left, Helen and I sat in silence. We could do more of that, she said. We could do a lot of that, I agreed. We had $400 million sitting in a basement. We needed maybe $1 million to live comfortably for the rest of our lives. The rest could change the world. Quietly, carefully, one person at a time. Spring brought fog and rain, and we fell into patterns. I fixed up the exterior of the building, replaced broken windows, painted the trim. Helen planted flowers in boxes along the pier, bright geraniums and petunias that made the old harbor feel less forgotten. We looked like what we were, elderly caretakers of an old property, living simply, bothering no one. But twice a week, we drove to different cities and changed lives. A single mother working 3 jobs found her rent mysteriously paid for 6 months. A veteran sleeping in his car discovered an envelope with $5,000 and a note. "Thank you for your service." A free clinic struggling to buy supplies received an anonymous donation that covered their needs for a year. College students drowning in debt found their balances suddenly zeroed out by a private scholarship fund. We were meticulous. Never the same amount twice. Never patterns. Always cash. Always untraceable. Helen kept notebooks in code, tracking who we'd helped and how much. We capped ourselves at $50,000 a week, enough to matter, not enough to attract attention. "We gave away $2.3 million this year," Helen said one night in April, reviewing her ledgers, "and helped 68 people directly, plus the clinic, the library, the food bank." "How does it feel?" I asked. She closed the notebook and looked at me over her reading glasses. "Like we're finally doing what money is supposed to do." In May, James sent flowers for Mother's Day. Helen thanked him politely by text, didn't call. Michael sent a card with a check for $500. Helen donated it to the women's shelter anonymously. David didn't acknowledge the day at all. "Do you miss them?" I asked that evening. Helen was quiet, watching boats move through the harbor. "I miss who I thought they were," she finally said. "But those people didn't exist. These men, the ones who threw us away, I don't know them well enough to miss them." It hurt, hearing her say it. But it was true. In June, Sarah came back. She'd found work, found an apartment, started taking classes at the community college. She brought us flowers and homemade cookies and cried when she thanked us. "I wanted you to know I made it," she said. "Because of you, I made it." "You made it because you're strong," Helen corrected. "We just helped you stand up." Sarah visited twice more that summer, bringing her boyfriend once, her new baby nephew another time. She became something like family, the kind that chooses you, not the kind you're born with. In August, the building inspector came by. "Routine check," he said, looking at his clipboard. Someone had reported suspicious activity at the old storehouse. I showed him around the ground floor, the second-floor apartment, the third-floor storage. Permits were in order. I'd been careful about that. Building was sound. No violations. "What about the basement?" he asked. "Sealed off years ago," I said, which was technically true. "Old flooding damage, condemned space. You can check the original permits from the 80s. It's listed as uninhabitable." He did check. Found Uncle Martin's carefully filed paperwork declaring the basement sealed due to water damage, not for occupancy. Everything legal and documented. "Someone reported you might be running some kind of business down here," he said, suspicious. "Do I look like I'm running a business?" I asked, gesturing at my 76-year-old self in paint-stained work clothes. He left, satisfied. But I knew who'd called. One of our sons, probably James, still checking on us. Still worried we might be managing without them. "We need to be more careful," Helen said after he'd gone. We were. No more local donations. No more patterns. We spread our giving across 6 states, used different methods, waited longer between distributions. The money in the basement sat patient and quiet, waiting to change more lives. In October, a year after we'd opened the storehouse, Helen got a call from a number she didn't recognize. She answered on speaker. "Mrs. Morrison, this is Rebecca Chun. I'm an attorney representing your sons, James, Michael, and David Morrison. They've asked me to contact you regarding a family matter." "What matter?" Helen asked. "They'd like to meet with you and Mr. Morrison to discuss reconciliation. They're prepared to make certain financial arrangements to compensate for any hardship you experienced during last year's transition." "Transition," I said. "That's what we're calling it. Mr. Morrison, your sons have expressed genuine remorse. They'd like to help you, if you'd allow them." Helen looked at me. I shook my head. "Ms. Chun," Helen said, "please tell our sons that we're fine. We don't need their money. We don't need their help. And we don't need reconciliation with people who threw us away like trash when we became inconvenient. Mrs. Morrison, their family." "No," Helen said. "Family doesn't do what they did. You can tell them we're alive, we're well, and we're done. Goodbye." She hung up. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down the phone. "That was hard," I said. "It gets easier," she replied. "Every time, it gets a little easier." That night, we sat on our deck watching the harbor lights and talking about the future, about the shelter that needed expansion, about the scholarship fund we could establish, About the foster kids who aged out of the system with nothing. We had resources now, real resources, and the rest of our lives to use them. We could give it all away, Helen said. Every penny except what we need. Die broke and happy. We could, I agreed. Or we could build something that keeps giving after we're gone. A foundation, a trust, something permanent. She squeezed my hand. I like that better. We hired lawyers, good ones, from 3 states away. Set up a foundation with its own board, its own mission, its own funding structure. We seeded it with $50 million initially, anonymous donors to a trust that would help people like us. Elderly people abandoned by family, young people aging out of foster care, anyone society had discarded. The foundation would outlive us, doing quietly what we'd started, changing lives one person at a time, asking nothing in return. In December, a year and 2 months after our sons had thrown us away, Christmas cards arrived. All 3 of them. Pictures of grandchildren we'd never met. Notes about their lives, their successes, their happiness. Helen looked at them for a long time, then filed them in a box with the others. Maybe someday, she said. Maybe, I agreed. But probably not. They'd made their choice. We'd made ours. That evening, we walked the pier together, the cold December wind coming off the harbor. Inside our strange home, a storehouse full of secrets and second chances, lights glowed warm. Our lives had been reduced to almost nothing, and in that nothing, we'd found everything. For $100 million sat in our basement. But our real wealth was this. We'd been discarded and survived it. We'd been broken and rebuilt stronger. We'd learned that family isn't who shares your blood, it's who stays when staying gets hard. Our sons never came back. Not really. They sent cards and lawyers and guilt disguised as concern. But they never came back. And standing there on the pier, Helen's hand in mine, the harbor spreading dark and infinite before us, I realized we didn't need them to. We had each other. We had purpose. We had the quiet satisfaction of lives changed and futures rebuilt. We had a fortune we'd never asked for, putting it to use in ways Uncle Martin would have understood. We'd been thrown away. We'd found treasure. And we'd learned the difference between what you're given and what you become. The fog rolled in off the water, soft and concealing. Somewhere in the city, our sons lived their successful lives, probably never thinking about the parents they'd discarded. We thought about them less each day. And that, I realized, was the truest freedom of all.